All right, let's jump right in. We're going to crack open what you could call a prophetic cold case. It's a single, super cryptic verse from the book of Revelation that, honestly, has had people scratching their heads for centuries. But according to the source material we're digging into, the clues to solve this whole thing have been hiding in plain sight the entire time.
The beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them. Whoa. I mean, that is some intense language, right? The imagery is just so stark, so violent. It sounds like it's pulled straight from a blockbuster fantasy movie, not a historical text.
So you've got to ask yourself, what are we actually looking at here? Is this prophecy talking about some kind of future, apocalyptic monster? Or, and this is the wild part, our source suggests, is it possible this prophecy has already happened, describing one of the most famous events in all of human history? Let's follow the clues and see where they lead.
To solve this, we have to do what any good detective would. We got to break down the evidence. We're going to take this verse piece by piece, isolating the key phrases, and see how this interpretation fits. So, first things first, let's talk about the timing.
The verse kicks off with a very specific trigger, when they shall have finished their testimony. This tells us the attack isn't random. It's precisely timed to happen after something is completed. The big questions are, the completion of what, and who exactly are they?
Well, according to this interpretation, that phrase points directly to the length of Jesus' ministry, those 3.5 years of his testimony on earth, which, as we know, came to a head right before the crucifixion. So right off the bat, the prophecy seems to be zeroing in on a very specific moment in time.
Okay, so if the when lines up with the end of Jesus' ministry, then who's the who? Who's the attacker? The text gives it this terrifying name, the beast. Let's take a closer look at how it's described.
And yeah, this is the phrase that usually throws everyone for a loop. A beast, climbing out of a bottomless pit. But our source says, don't picture a literal monster with fangs and claws. The real key, it suggests, is hidden in that word ascendeth. And here is the big twist. The beast isn't a creature, it's a system. It's the combined political and religious machine of the day, the power of the Roman Empire fused with the authority of the Sanhedrin priests. The very two groups who saw Jesus as a major threat and worked together to orchestrate his death. So when it says, the beast ascendeth, or rises up, it's not about coming out of a physical hole in the ground. In this view, it's a symbol for that human system of power mobilizing, getting its act together, and rising up to put its plan into motion. And that plan was to arrest, try, and execute Jesus.
All right, let's keep going. On to the next clue. The prophecy says the beast will make war against them and kill them. Notice it's plural. But wait a minute. If this is all pointing to the crucifixion, wasn't there only one victim? That seems like a big contradiction.
This is another really fascinating part of this interpretation. The source argues that the plural they and them isn't about the number of people, it's symbolic. It refers to the twofold nature of Jesus' ministry, the idea that he operated with the dual power of the Spirit and the Word. So the language is plural to describe one person embodying two functions. Now this brings us to an absolutely crucial point. The beast doesn't just win here. Jesus is very clear that his life isn't taken from him by force. He gives it up willingly. He allows the system to overcome him because it's part of a much bigger plan. So in a way, it's an act of power on his part, not one of defeat.
So, let's recap. We have the timing, the attacker, and the victim all identified within this framework. Now, let's look at the attack itself. The prophecy uses the language of a military campaign: make war, overcome, and kill.
And the source maps these terms directly onto the events of the Passion. Making war was the conspiracy, the backroom deals by the religious and Roman leaders. Overcoming them was the successful arrest in the garden, which, again, Jesus permitted. And killing them, well, that was the final brutal act of crucifixion. It lines up step by step.
But now we get to what this source presents as its ace in the hole, the real smoking gun. And it all comes down to a single, tiny word from the original Greek text of Revelation. That word is telesosi. And this, right here, is the clincher. The prophecy begins when they telesosi, when they shall have finished their testimony. Now think about Jesus on the cross. What is one of his final famous declarations? Tetelestai, it is finished. It is the exact same Greek root word. The source argues there's no way that's a coincidence. It's like a linguistic breadcrumb connecting the prophecy directly to its fulfillment. So you might be wondering, okay,
how does someone even come up with these connections? Are they just pulling this out of thin air? Well, no, not at all. This kind of interpretation is based on specific, long-established methods for reading these texts. Let's quickly look at the tools in their toolkit.
First up is a concept called typology. The easiest way to think of it is like foreshadowing in a book or a movie. It's this idea that earlier events or people in the Bible act as types or previews that are all pointing forward to and find their ultimate meaning in Jesus. In this view, the Revelation prophecy is another type that is fulfilled by the crucifixion.
The second tool is called spiritual parallelism. This is basically the belief that history rhymes, that God often works using repeating patterns and themes. So a story about a beast or a worldly system rising up against God's witness isn't just a one-and-done event. It's a recurring pattern that illustrates how worldly power tends to confront divine truth.
So, when you put all of these pieces together, you get a complete, self-contained solution to this ancient puzzle. In this interpretation, this scary verse in Revelation isn't a prediction about some far-off future. Instead, it's a deeply symbolic retelling of the crucifixion itself, understood through these lenses of typology and spiritual parallelism.
And that leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. If this interpretation holds up, if this ancient text isn't just about a single moment in history, but about a recurring pattern, it really makes you ask a question. What does it look like when those same forces, those systems of worldly power, confront divine testimony in our own time? It's a fascinating idea to reflect on.